Your turn to pick.
Let's go. This is domination among the things you've been waiting for. Headed to the top if we make it there, we'll be taking more. There's no INT, but something I guarantee is when you look into my eyes, it's determination you see. It goes without implication, innovation is at our eyes. So take a walk with a boss first, pick on flip side.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 6, right? This is episode 6 of First Pick. We took about a month, right? 3 weeks off, so we're back here with another episode. A little bit different this week due to some scheduling issues and time frame issues. We kind of have to record this early and then just get a VOD and stick the VOD out there. So that is why this is not being streamed live, but it will show up at the usual places on YouTube and on MP3/podcast. And I got stuff to talk about that as well, but we'll do that after. Today we're just doing a solo cast or double cast. So with me is Frost. Frost, how are you doing on this fine Friday morning?
Doing good. We're all missing Mania. He'll be back next week though. So
he will be back next week. That's the plan. Yeah, so if people are missing Mania, he should be back. He's had a lot of life changes, which I guess is the right way to say it.
And the holiday season.
Holidays,
all that stuff.
He's been working a ton, but he'll be back. Before we talk about Dota, I guess kind of the thing I wanted to say about the podcast RSS stuff. We're in the process of transitioning websites. I've been doing that now for a while, and it's been a pain in the ass, but we're almost done. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be moving the RSS feed to a different spot, and so the new one is going to be firstpick.libsyn.com because we're moving the hosting to Libsyn off the previous host. The goal is that you guys won't have to do anything, that I will be able to do like a 301 forward from the old feed to the new feed. I look at you, you have no idea what I'm talking about, do you? So we're gonna try to get the feed and we're gonna forward it to the new one. And so if you're downloading the podcast each week, you won't have to do a thing. It'll just work. If it doesn't, then I'll be sure to put something out there saying, hey, it's broken. Here's the new one. So that should be for that. And but yeah, other than that, that's kind of only an announcement-ish type thing. I hope everybody enjoyed their holidays. I know I did, and things have been crazy busy. But let's talk about Dota. Where would you like to start? Do you want to start with the D2L since we're kind of short on time here? Sure. All right. I mean, how did you think about the tournament overall? I have a little bit of ranty stuff to say, but why don't you go first? How did you feel about the event?
Well, I don't know who I was saying this to. I'm not even sure if I said this to you or to someone else, but I remember having a conversation about it, and I was like, I'm very happy for EG doing their own tournament. I thought the venue was nice. I thought everything was pretty good, so I was very excited for them, considering that's what we do. Flipside has run their own events, and that's sort of the level that we would have wanted to take it. So I was very happy with that. I thought it went really well. The tournament was pretty cool. I mean, the games are exciting, the teams are exciting. I thought I was surprised by how well some of the Chinese players spoke English. That was the one thing I was like, whoa. So, like between the RLTK and Loda, the joking going back and forth, and just several other interviews. I don't know. I was just very surprised with how the production was and everything. And they brought Anna over to do the hosting and stuff. So, I mean, they went all out. It wasn't my favorite tournament after TI, but this was a pretty exciting tournament with everything that went on behind the scenes with the stand-ins and the games and all that stuff. So
the stand-in stuff was very unfortunate, but it also kind of seemed like it just couldn't be avoided. With Fnatic having they were able to grab Demon and Owie. Demon's becoming like a professional stand-in. I feel like he could just just be stand-in Demon and just keep going around from team to team, and that he could probably make a pretty decent amount of money doing that. And he played good.
You know how much I love Fnatic, but this roster is better than the old roster. And it's just because the individual plays that can be made. Yeah. So Aoi, and I don't know, I don't want to start the cast off by being critical, but I just feel like Era is not as good as Aoi. Even though Aoi plays support, Aoi is still one of the best. I mean, I've been a fan of Aoi for almost a year and a half now. He was the one that started Brood going Manta and Mechanism on Viper, and now those are standard items. This guy, I've been saying for a long, long, long time that this kid was fucking special, and it's funny that, you know, like, you know, after meeting him, and then, you know, so much time has now passed that he's to the point where he is now. And this is no disrespect to Era. It's not that Era's a bad player. It's just I feel like, you know, Aoi's one of the a few special NA players, and I feel like, you know, Aoi and Demon on that roster, they were. I just think that team is more talented than they were previously. Obviously, they're not as good because of the chemistry, but in terms of talent, I felt like that was a really strong roster. I was one of the only people not surprised that they were going to do well, especially when I heard that Aoi was going to go back to carry, which I still feel he's better at than support. So I was one of the few that were like, no, man, like, I really like this roster. It's just there's something about the way they play. It's something about the way that they draft too. It's just, I don't know, it just works.
Yeah.
Like I really like this roster.
I was kind of in the camp that they were not going to do that well, just because with 2 stand-ins, that's about almost a half a team, I guess.
Yeah.
Of just people who you're not used to playing with, and that chemistry, and, you know, especially with Fnatic, is a lot of the times, I mean, we've done it in the past, we've kind of put them on a pedestal of like this team who has great stability, a good roster with like good solid players on it, and they kind of thrive off that chemistry, and they just have always been good, and then just over the past probably year or so they've gone up to that kind of tier 1 type level. So I just figured bringing in 2 dudes, you know, might not be super familiar with their play style, their draft style, or even just like their communication, like, you know, who's calling the shots and things like that, and then to go in there and take out Alliance and take out VC, and then put up a pretty good fight against LGD. I mean, that was pretty surprising. So
but there's 2 things about that though. So the thing is, so it's a fair argument that the stand-ins don't do well. Like I've seen it throughout my whole entire experience at Dota. Just one stand-in fucks everything up.
Just throws the chemistry out.
But the thing is, that isn't always the case. And what I mean by that is, so if you substitute Dendi on like any of the NA, well, it's not because of his individual skill, but some players are very rangy is the point I'm trying to make, right? So you have 2 players who have a very wide pool of heroes. They're very rangy. That makes the transition way easier, because what you can do then is start drafting towards their strengths. So pick a particular role, and then pick a hero that's suitable in the meta, that's also suitable with them, and is suitable for your strategy. And that's really not as hard as it sounds. And then another thing is pace, right? So you know, I've been very critical of Demon in the past, especially because of just a lot of the stupid mistakes that he does, that he should know better, and, you know, all that stuff. However, Aoi is a player with great pace, and what I mean by that, and I guess I'm using my old sports in here, but so pace is usually referred to as speed. But in football, especially me, so I had a quarterbacks coach that was always like you have to have good pace, and what that means is plays after critical errors. You have to have good pace, right? Because like as a quarterback, you have to remember that the last play doesn't matter anymore. You have to go to the next down. So like that's something that was always etched in me. If you noticed Aoi and a lot of speed gaming, even Envy, after critical errors, they buckle down and they like come back. It's almost like the errors didn't happen. Like, how many times have you seen Eternal Envy feed on like Weaver or Storm Spirit, do something crazy stupid, and then he has a run of 6 kills right after that? I mean, he's done some pretty crazy shit. He's even done it with Clinks. But they like that team, Speed Gaming, I think, interestingly enough, right, as crazy as it sounds, they have good pace. When they make bad plays, they clean it up right away. It's almost like
it's just kind of keeping that even level. Not not getting too low.
Exactly. Right, but a lot of teams and a lot of players don't have that, because if you notice, some of that, like some players have the adverse effect, right? So they make a mistake, and that snowballs in the opposite direction, right? They get more down on themselves. They get more frustrated. Some people get more angry. I felt like Aoi was one of those players with great pace, and even if you're screwing up on land, like they just always have a thing. Like Speed Gaming, I think is I think Na'Vi and Alliance have have that down pat. But
Yeah.
Speed Gaming is one of those upper echelon teams, I think, that have that great sense of pace. I think DK, however, does not. I feel like when DK start making critical errors, it just gets worse and worse for them. But that's something I noticed, and that's something I look at. And when I found out Aoi was playing, like I was like, oh man, they're good, because a lot of issues you have in or at LANs are when you're playing as a stand-in, you have a difficult time like knowing how to come back the same way you would when you're comfortable with the players. So if you're getting stomped in your lane and you're trying to gank with the other players, you're gonna have most of the time you're gonna have a harder time doing so because of the lack of chemistry, right? But the thing is, and that can sometimes drain on you, right? You notice at MLG day one with Arteezy, right? When he was off lane, like you notice it starts to get worse and worse and worse when you're like, shit, nothing I'm doing is working. Nothing I'm doing is working. But you know, when you have players with a very strong mindset and a very confident demeanor, you can still persevere through the mistakes and still end up winning. Like they won games. They took games that I didn't think they would win. And it was after like even Alliance was up on them really early, and I kind of thought the game was over. And nope, you know, and that's Alliance we're talking about too. Right. So, like I mean, it's a testament to how good those players are. But they have great pace. Like they're very, very, very good with that sort of stuff. Even Demon. I mean,
Demon played really well. Like he
absolutely.
I mean, for the amount of traveling he's done, you know, he went to Korea then for like a month or so. Then he came back, and he really hasn't had a stable roster. I think he played like pretty damn well considering, you know, all things. So
yeah,
I don't know what's gonna happen with him. I don't know if there's enough people in NA to form a new team with him, or if he's just gonna kind of keep this streaming and standing in kind of thing going on for a bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other person in NA that I can think of that is kind of teamless right now is 1437, right? And he's kind of pretty much just casting. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, but the thing is, he wasn't relegated to Korea because he's a bad player. That's
no, I feel
never
like he was
been criticism of
took
mine.
an opportunity. Like he saw a good opportunity and he took it.
He's a really good player, very good player. Just sometimes makes very bad decisions and isn't always, you know, his mind isn't always on what it should be. Maybe his dedication isn't where it should be as well. But he's a very good player. Some of these other players that are going to Korea, they're going to Korea because they have no other choice, right? They have no other options. Demon was not one of those players. So I don't like, I've always felt he's such a strong player. It's just, you know, all the other stuff sometimes I guess may make him not worth it. Yeah, absolutely.
He'll be all right. He'll figure something out here sooner or later. But let's keep moving because we're running out of time, or else I'm not going to make it to work today, which is big trouble. But shameless plug. What if we had a place for people to work on those mental strategies, on kind of staying even keel and not getting too up or too down after mistakes? Do you think we could find a place so people can learn that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. I think there's a big market for that, especially considering
what if there's a place called the Dota Clinic where they could go to look at that kind of stuff?
That's something I would recommend to anybody I'm coaching or any teams I coach, or
there we go.
You know, all that stuff. Absolutely.
Shameless plug. I just put up episode 0 today of the Dota Clinic on the channel, so I had to sneak that in there just a little bit. So.
Well, I think it makes more sense for you because you have a psych background, right? Yeah. Like you're going you're in grad school, so it's not like this is your forte, and that's something that definitely you can help other people with. I mean, personally, on the outside, not about Dota, when we've had talks about either life or things that we should do or things I should be doing or all that stuff, you more often than not you're right. So I think
like 80,
you know
20.
Yeah, so like if I listen to you and other people value your opinion, I am sure that the Dota community will value your opinion. So I mean I think it's a great thing that you're doing. And like I remember the thing that we spoke about I remember in StarCraft 2 people always had this question about ladder anxiety, and I never understood what that was. But it's funny, it was such a big problem, and I remember that nobody would address it, and I always thought that was very weird. So when we were having this discussion, like it brought me back to that. Like I was like, man, I remember so many people used to talk about ladder anxiety, and I used to be like, what the
Well,
fuck
now we're
is
seeing
ladder?
that same thing for ranked matchmaking. For some reason, it's just
Yeah.
like when that number's there, it causes people like so much more anxiety and frustration. I mean, even we see people getting frustrated and angry in non-ranked games, but just for some reason that like that number that's just attached to it, who at this point it's still kind of meaningless. Like there's no real like, the higher the number the better, I guess, but there's still no like metric of, you could have a bad team a couple of those games and you might not be exactly where you belong. Like there's a lot of variables involved, and the fact that like
There's
a couple hundred up or down completely like pumps somebody up or just crushes their spirits.
But there's an overwhelming, like, perpetual cycle of hypocrisy in Dota and in esports in general. And I mean, it's also why a lot of people sometimes dislike me or my approach because they feel like I'm an asshole. But the truth is, it's the truth. So you have these people that want to win, right? They don't want to lose. They get mad. But then they don't do things that are conducive to the success of teams. They would last pick something that shouldn't be picked, or they'll pick into heroes so they'll pick a hero that is terrible against the current heroes on the board on the other team, or they'll draft, or you'll be in captain's mode, which I've seen, and it's even happened in ranked games. I don't understand, Valve, what the hell, where the one individual player, not the 4-stack, gets the captain's spot and he doesn't communicate, and you can't talk to him because he just drafts whatever. And then there's always arguments, and there's always this sort of sense of resentment on both sides. And my whole thing from the beginning is, if you did your job, we wouldn't have been here. And I think it's funny because all those same people that have those or get frustrated and have that ladder anxiety, in my opinion, it comes from preparation. Because if you're really, if you're struggling to perform at anything, this is beyond esports, this is beyond Dota.
Yeah,
it comes down to your preparation. If you're organized, if you prepare, if you work hard, you won't. I mean, you're going to be nervous. In my opinion, there's a difference between anxiety and being nervous. Anxiety has detrimental effects to the way you can perform. Being nervous, you'll always be nervous.
Yeah,
I was nervous before every game, but I still played every game. It's not like it stopped me from throwing a ball, right? So it's like, I think that people misinterpret what that means. But I also think if we just went back to the basics, I've been saying this for like 2 years now. If everyone just does their job, right, things should go according to plan. And even if you lose a game, sometimes you lose because they're better.
Yeah,
I'd rather that than
avoid it.
Not giving yourself an opportunity to win. So I think that show is going to be great, and I hope that I hope that people take it seriously. For the people that need it or want it. Obviously, it's not going to be for everybody.
No, definitely not. It's definitely, if people are interested, great. I guess at the end of the day, before we wrap this up, this is a good tangent. It's something that's really important to me. Like you said, we talk about it a lot, and I bring it up with a lot of people all the time. And something that I do, 9 to 5 every day. So it's something that is like actually really important to me. So we'll see where it goes. It should be fun. It should be different. It should be interesting. But let's talk about news because we are running out of time.
Sure.
Do you want to talk about Virtus Pro? I mean, they're kind of having roster swaps, but I feel like that's not really news. Virtus Pro just kind of has roster swaps just consistently over and over.
Well, NS came back from retirement. NS is, in my opinion, one of the better players not on Na'Vi from that area, from the CIS region. So, I mean, I'm very glad to see him back. I was very disappointed to see him go. So, I mean, it's very good that he comes back. I kind of want Mania to come back, although I know it won't happen. So, you know how it is.
Yeah. Everybody comes back sooner or later, I feel like, in one capacity or another. I mean...
Well, this game's like an X with a lot of history.
Yeah.
Can't let it go. Can't let it go.
All right, gotta enjoy the history. So now their roster is going to be Arsart, God, Illidan, NS, and then JOTM, still kind of a stand-in, I guess. Who knows if he's going to go full-time or not. But yeah, it's definitely interesting because I feel like VP always is kind of a decent team, but they change players so often that it's just they never quite get that stability that they need to kind of reach something of a alliance or
and I feel like this meta is so conducive to the success of
like that
Russian aggressive players.
Definitely.
And I was so shocked. I was saying that from the beginning. 6.79 should be a CIS region. Like, I mean, they're going to be a nightmare for everyone else, and it hasn't happened. And I'm so shocked because this is like their way to play Dota. This is team fighting before 10 minutes, tower diving, like. Tower pushing.
Yeah.
This is their meta, and I'm so shocked that all of this stuff has gone down. But it's also the player shuffles and all that
Never helped.
nonsense.
I mean, the only team that had a lot of success there for a bit was Empire, and then they kind of just dropped off the face of the earth, unfortunately.
And the most disappointing thing about all of this is, and this is no disrespect to Solo. I doubt he'll hear this anyway and complain, but the unintended consequence of what he did is he literally crippled like almost the whole region, because Roxas, I felt also were getting so much better. Like you remember at the qualifiers, they were playing our team.
They were like a complete
just so
good team. Yeah.
So good, and it's amazing how like just one mistake from one person affects lives or affects the games of 4 other people. Hence why Dota Clinic is important for public matchmaking and all this other stuff, because people really fail to realize it takes one. Just takes one.
Yeah, just throw it out of proportion.
Crazy.
It was really in the the TI3 qualifiers where they kind of came out. They played damn well. I mean, like Vanscore went from being a no name to just everybody talking about him within like 2 days, 1-2 days.
It's
good
crazy.
team.
And even this Chinese thing, it's going to ruin another section for a little bit because it's going to destroy, so.
It's weird. Let's talk about that next, since that is actually fascinating. And who knows where it's going to end up. Like, none of this stuff is 100% penciled in, I guess, or in writing yet. So now the rumor, I'd say it's a pretty good rumor, because it's coming from a whole bunch of different sources. It's not just one person putting it out there on Twitter. I mean, there's a lot of people saying that this is going to happen. So this is the new Chinese Dream Team, and it's going to be with Hao, Faith, Mu, Chuan, and Zhao 8. I think this is awesome, because I am a huge fan of both Mu and Hao. Chuan, everybody loves Chuan, so you can't diss that. I find it interesting the fact that they're kind of pulling players from a bunch of different teams, and we're going to kind of have this situation where it's like, here's DK and here's this new team, and they're going to be the two juggernauts going against each other. Which I think might be good for kind of that rivalry, that kind of Na'Vi alliance of the East, right? I mean, you'll have that kind of put people in different camps, but it definitely, I feel like it hurts those other teams quite a bit. I think the biggest loser of this whole thing is ZSMJ. Like, I don't know what's going on with that team now, if they're losing a bunch of people, and kind of what he's going to be doing, and it's interesting. I mean, what do you think? How do you think this team would work out?
I have so many feelings and so conflicted on both sides. I'm never going to tell people not to do what they want. Like, I get it, right? You want to play with your friends. If your friends are really good, right? Like, it's like me playing with my real life friends, or me playing with people I've known in the Dota scene for a long time. Who would I choose, right? Like, I don't know. It's tough for me to say this is what they shouldn't do, because I feel like obviously they're men. They deserve to do whatever it is that they want to do, and nobody should ever tell them not to. So I just think it's unfortunate, because we saw this with Na'Vi, like, and I will, and I'm gonna say this until the day I exit the Dota scene forever, because Empire was the best team in Europe during their reign, before they just got castrated by Na'Vi. There was a little bit of an issue between Goblak and Scandal. If they could have stuck that out, they would have been great. Funnick leaving crippled them.
Oh, big time.
Crippled them. Miles also fell apart. I thought and Miles really hasn't been anything since. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, they've had their issues.
I hate it. Like, we're getting to a place in sports where we're going to be like baseball, or how the NFL was in the 80s, where teams just stacked rosters until you have a governing body, which, right, everything comes full circle to fix this, because now it's getting to a point where you're going to have like 3 or 4, eventually, if this continues, you'll have 3 or 4 top teams, because EG, they just got another League of Legends roster. Organizations like that are going to cripple organizations like us, and we're going to be non-existent, because what's going to end up happening is they have so much money, they can have 2, 3, 4, 5 teams, because they can afford to pay them. They can just have the best players. It's like really crazy now, because what's happening in China is basically they're just screwing over. They're taking some of the best players from all these different teams. How are they going to compete? So at TI, we're basically going to have maybe 6 or 7 teams that are going to be able to compete for a title instead of 16 like it was last year. Like, I don't know. It's really crazy.
It's weird, but it's been happening for a long time, because
and it's the nature of the beast. This is it's always going to develop this way. Absolutely. And I don't really mind it, because I'm a huge Yankee fan.
Oh,
right. So I obviously don't mind things like this being done. And I live in Miami, right?
Can't
The
buy
Heat,
yourself
right?
a
So you
ring.
see the parallel.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I'm just saying that it's very difficult for esports, I think, to be like esports if there's only 3 or 4 teams, right? Like EG, IG, Navi, they need competition, right? Like you don't prosper, you don't grow without competition. The NFL is the biggest sport in America and competes even on soccer internationally for viewership. As amazing as that sounds, because of what? Because of the parity in the league. Now there are rules like hard caps, and I'm not gonna get it. I mean, this is a Dota fucking podcast. I'm not gonna get into that stuff. What I'm saying though is
There's a lot more that goes into kind of keeping everybody equal.
exactly, because if not, you'll end up like the MLB, which is no longer America's favorite pastime, which is right above hockey in terms of viewership.
Well, I think the
That's
interesting
amazing.
thing too, between, since we're going down this road of sports and not sports, is you have something like baseball. You do have things like the draft factored in, to where you take a team like the Pirates, who they were really good for a while there, and then over the last decade they were really bad. I mean, they were just one of the worst teams in all of baseball, and they continuously drafted well. They've got good young guys. They made some good trades, and then they make the playoffs last year.
Yeah, but that's because of
Same thing like Orioles. Same thing.
Kutchum. They got really lucky, and remember, they have a bunch of makeshift guys that nobody wanted, almost like.
But they still brought it together.
Every year, absolutely, and they do well.
But if in esports here we have let's just take Dota, there is no draft. There is no area. Like you're not going to have a team that gets first pick from a guy in like an IXDL or something like that, and they're going to get this young guy who's coming up. Something like I feel like Arteezy's kind of like the Johnny Manziel right now in football. It's like someone wants to, if you're a really bad team and you can get him and build a roster around him, then all of a sudden you're going to be good. We're going to see like the Jaguars pick up Manziel and try to build a roster around him just so they can, kind of not be as bad.
I think we're not big enough yet.
No, but I think we're going to get there sooner or later.
Yeah. But I think it's more difficult. So one thing I've learned is when there's no real competition, it's not as exciting. So when you only have 4 or 5 teams with all the best players on those teams, I think it makes it more difficult to be appealing to the people that don't, right? Like the people that don't watch it all the time, because the misconception people have is the NFL isn't as big because it has such a rabid fan base. The NFL is as big because on any given Sunday, anyone can win, and people like that shit.
Yeah.
People like it. People that don't even watch the NFL will always watch the playoffs. Will always watch the Super Bowl. Not for the commercials, because games are exciting and like all that stuff. Like it's not really just for the commercials. It's parity in sports means something. And if you don't believe it, just look at what's happening now with baseball, basketball, and the NFL. Just look at it, right?
But like basketball, you have the Pacers who are playing phenomenal. Like they were a team that was pretty garbage a couple years ago. So. I think that draft picks
coaching from Frank Vogel, excuse me, and their players have gotten so much better. Like Lance Stevenson was like a breath away from being kicked out the league, right? But then Larry Legend comes, right? Takes him under his wing. Now look at the type of player he is now. That sort of development really happened. Well, and let's not forget, Larry Bird is now the only player ever to be NBA MVP, right? Executive of the Year and Coach of the Year. So you're talking about right? Like we're talking about the guy. So like he brings good drafting and all that stuff.
Yeah, there's all that stuff comes in.
Absolutely. I'm only speaking about the
like the current state.
Exactly, right? Because the NBA is just under the NFL, but the NBA is still dipping in its finals ratings and its ratings all over, right? Like, I mean, all you got to do is open the Wall Street Journal and you'll read articles about this sort of stuff all the time. They have all this stuff where they compare the sports and stuff like that. Baseball players make more than the NFL and the NBA, yet they make the least from TV money, and like all those other marketing campaigns. Why? Because people aren't interested in baseball anymore. People like to go because you're paying for the experience, but nobody likes to watch baseball anymore. Why? Because it's boring. But it's boring mainly because there's only every year. Like if you look at the playoffs, it's always the same. Exactly, it's less popular. The NFL has it where I think it's like 4 out of the last 7 Super Bowls have been won by wild card teams.
Yeah, and that
So
keeps it interesting.
yeah, like
we gotta scale this back, or else we're gonna lose the gaming tag, and this is gonna be sports.
well, no,
podcast tag.
but it's relevant to esports because of the fact that
it is.
what's happening in China is unfortunate because LGD right now I think is one of the best teams in the world. Me and Samo had this conversation.
And they're
one of the best teams in the world, and now they're just broken apart.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that sucks ass.
Yeah,
Jiaowei,
a lot of teams are gonna happen.
And it's like No Tail leaving for Navi. That's crushing for Fnatic fans.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a Fnatic fan forever. I would hate that shit. Like, I mean, all personal feelings aside, I just think teams, I root for teams less than players.
Mm-hmm.
Give a shit about players, like, because every player is good, and yeah, Burning is my guy, but really, I root for teams.
Yeah,
more than I do players.
That's how it is in sports too. You get get your jersey, you get your hat, you stick with that. You stick with your team. But I think a lot of this comes back to we went way left today.
No, but it
goes back. So I think the key is rather than trying to like focus on dispersing the teams, I think we need to kind of buff up the middle tier teams, give teams more tournaments, more money to teams like Power Rangers, Next KZ, or kind of in this middle bracket to where they're not quite there, but maybe if they play Dota full time every day, all day, they might get there. But who knows what's going to happen with that? Because right now in tournaments, you see the consistency of the top 4 or 5 teams winning these events, getting the same amount of money, and just kind of that cycle continues. And so I don't know if
I also
something
think we
like
need
the
to
Join Dota
develop
League is going to fix that issue.
Yes. See, I like the Join Dota League and leagues that like I'm trying to do with Martin. We need to develop the
bottom tier, the middle tier. You got to get them. You got to bump them up.
The players, because somewhere out there in the U.S. or somewhere out there in Europe, there is the next Dendi, the next Puppy,
Guaranteed.
the next Owie, the next Fear.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, they're having a hard time breaking through the scene. They may have the talent, they may have the passion and the will. They're having a hard time breaking into esports. It's not fucking easy. I mean, we need to look no further than Cap, right?
Yeah.
Like Cap was grinding for 3.5 years and finally got to cast for Toby, who he was already in the circle with. Toby used to help us in Dota Live 3.5 years ago, never gave us the time of day. It's really funny that he gave Cap the time of day. Now Cap is like, joined Dota's homeboy. They flew him out to Germany. Now it's like, but the funny thing is, you could have had Cap 3.5 years ago if you just paid attention. He was there. We need to develop the younger generation, because that will help this sort of issue that we're having, because Complexity, they picked up Fire, right? And then after TI2, Complexity became Team Liquid. But people don't remember Complexity or Team Fire. They only remember Team Liquid. But those guys literally came from nowhere, just like me and you, right? Like, they came from obscurity, and then now look, they're competing against the best teams in the world.
Yeah. Well, they got a good
That's the
opportunity.
only way to counter what's going on here. Because if you have money, and if you want to be LeBron and you want to bring people to, if you want to be Wade and you want to bring people to South Beach, the best thing to do is just right. If you have money and you have the relationships, bring them all together.
Yeah.
I mean, that team's gonna be fun to watch. It just sucks, I think, for the 3 teams that get castrated in the process. We've already seen it happen in Europe. Now it's happening in China, kind of again because of what happened with DK, right? Sort of.
Yeah.
In a way.
In a way, yeah. Right. They're definitely ruining a lot of those rosters, and we'll see teams kind of like with Rattlesnake where they kind of just disappear.
But Chuan's back.
Yeah, that's right. He had his 6 months off. He got to go do whatever he did for the last 6 months. But I mean, it should be interesting. I feel like talking about the Navi thing. At that time they kind of screwed up a lot of rosters. I feel like it's slowly starting to balance it out. Like it's starting to come back a bit. We're not there yet, but we're seeing Fnatic playing really well. Empire's playing really well for a while.
Well, it's the meta.
Like, the meta definitely helps, but then you got like Power Rangers, Next KZ, these teams, especially in Starlighter. Like Starlighter did a really good job of getting teams, like a whole wide umbrella of teams, and giving a lot of these like kind of middle tier teams a shot at the top tier teams. And so I think we're slowly getting there. We just need to find a way to where we can get those middle tier teams up the next level, like something like the Four Friends in Chile or Trilly, whatever, 4FC. You know, they were a team that they were kind of in the middle. They competed sometimes, but they didn't really win stuff, and they kind of hung in there for a long time. And they kind of proved if you stick to it and play well, they went from a team that kind of probably shouldn't have been playing against, Alliance and Navi and stuff, and they were taking games off them. So as far as if that we're going to get there,
they defied the odds, mainly because remember, you're competing against people that do this for a living, that they get paid to just play Dota, and you're playing Dota, but you're not getting paid. So sometimes they have work and school. It's an
yeah. And I think that's where these kind of middle tier tournaments are needed to kind of stop this. But
absolutely,
to kind of scale this back, because we're just about out of time for today, or else I'm not going to make it to work. I think it should be interesting at least to see this team versus DK, because you have these two massive, giant organizations going at each other now. And I think that, it kind of sucks for the other organizations because they're going to scramble. But, perhaps they pick up some kind of unknown players and bring them in and maybe give them a spotlight and give them a shot to kind of develop. And then maybe that spurs additional, people jumping into the Dota scene, because now there's, some openings on these bigger teams where there's salary and things like that. That might happen. And also, I think we're still at a point to where, TI3, we got Alliance Navi, most watched game, because those are the two behemoths. If we, get a finals now of, this team versus Alliance or something like that, I think we're still going to get more viewers and more eyeballs coming into Dota, which is still ultimately going to bring in more tournaments, more fans, all that kind of good stuff across the board. Yeah. And then the last thing I have to say on this that's kind of a bummer is that Sansheng is going to be the coach. He was one of my favorite supports in all of China, so that's kind of a bummer that he's going to be transitioning out of the player role.
Yeah, I mean,
he was good. He would always do innovative and just fun. Listen, he was a fun guy to watch.
Life's hard. What are you going to do? Dota's even harder, though.
Dota's harder than life.
That's the truth.
Breaking news. Dota's harder than life. Let's wrap this up because we're running out of time. Sure. We tangented a lot more. Is there any other news that we should at least throw in there? And the only other story I can think about would be Team Zephyr and going to Korea. I know a lot of people were talking about that. I don't think there's much to say. Everything that needed to be said has been said. I think that's a great move for them, because if there's a place in the world that they can compete, it's in Korea. So best of luck to Purge and Blitz and was it Eosin, Bambo, and Corey, I think was the roster of 5. So this should be fun to watch at least, and it should be good for the the Korean scene, because the more help that they get, the more presence they get, the even better. And we're starting. I think tonight actually is the next on Sponsorship League number 3. And so
I still think they need a lot of development. I'm surprised they haven't tried to doctor some very good help on the outside. There are a bunch of players. Well, I mean, especially in China, there are going to be a bunch of players now that are
a lot of agents. I think they'll thrive though if they get that brewing sense of a community.
That's true. They're
talking amongst each other and themselves. I think it's going to take time, because Dota 2 is still so new over there compared to the rest of the world. Even NA, we always talk about how NA has a hard time competing, but I feel like over the last even year, we've gotten enough to where the people who are good in NA have done enough to bring other people kind of up a bit, and there's kind of that sense of pride in your region. You don't want we don't want to go get a Chinese team to teach NA players how to play. There's that sense of let's figure this out, let's get there.
I think that's very close-minded, though. I don't like that approach at all.
No.
That's very close-minded.
It's like bringing in a coach or someone to
if I was in charge of one of the Korean teams, the first thing I'll do is try to pick up one of these Chinese players and then develop him on our team, just like you picked up.
Grabs the SMJ.
Right? I mean, that's the natural order of things. So it's almost like how the MLS players takes the
We get David Beckham just to hope that people watch soccer here in the U.S.
But it's the same thing. I think, breaking news. You guys have to understand. There are parallels to esports in other places outside of the keyboard.
Can we just start a sports podcast instead? Can we just bag this thing?
I mean, we could. I enjoy Dota more. It's just before entering Dota, so I'm going to give everybody a little bit of a backstory. I didn't even own a computer until I got into this
walking
shit.
Out this door.
This is how cool Dota 2 is. So, but I mean, it's just the natural order of things is players that are not on rosters will probably end up going and playing for China or for some of these Korean teams, just like
Demon
did and Blitz did and all that. And I think that's great. I think they need more of that, because I fully expect them to compete TI5. TI4 I think is a little too soon, especially because I think they're going to be rough around the edges.
I think there'll be one team invited from Korea just to get Korean viewership.
Yeah,
I don't know if
Absolutely.
they're going to be
100%.
competing or at the top, but I think if
Yeah.
one team can develop, that's kind of the key right now. Is all we need is one team over there to kind of develop to be good enough to compete. To play well, not pull an MUFC and just go over and leave. If that's
I
gonna
have
happen,
faith in a Korean team that they're not going to be MUFC.
no,
I can.
they're going to get at least 1 or 2 wins.
I'm hoping, especially because the people over there, their mindsets are totally different.
Yeah.
Like when they completely
When they go to
dedicate
boot camp,
themselves
they're
to
gonna
the
boot camp.
craft, they dedicate themselves to the craft. So
Yeah.
hoping that they do very well, and I think it'll be great for Dota.
Oh,
Don't
definitely.
everybody better be rooting for Koreans, because if Koreans, I mean, could you imagine? That is literally
It's just
now
another
an
big growth
international
area.
sport.
It's another big growth area. It's another area of the world that Dota really isn't the main thing, but it has potential to grow and grow into the main thing. But let's end this. This was episode 6, mostly mostly talking about sports and all that kind of good stuff. Maybe we'll have another episode where we can talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame, and we can talk about the NFL playoffs. And no, nothing.
Not for these guys, no.
We'll have to get a new RSS feed. That's all right. Once the Chargers beat the Broncos this weekend, then we can start that show. So
Yeah, right.
just wait.
Oh my goodness.
Just wait. It's gonna happen. Philip Rivers leading us to victory.
Oh my goodness. These pipe dreams. DuckTales. Ooh.
All right. I'm done. What shout outs? Where can people find you?
I've been streaming a lot. F3 Frost.
Okay.
Twitter is Frost Dota.
Streaming Dota or
And-
DayZ? Both.
Dota more than DayZ, but
Okay.
both.
All right.
Even Hearthstone. Hearthstone's actually pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
And it's amazing how many viewers they get more viewers in Dota 2. It's mainly because of Crip and Trump, but still. My God. How crazy is that? That shit just came
good
out,
game.
and it's like,
It's a good game.
Yeah.
Not as good as Magic, but it's all right. It's there.
it's not as deep, I think, too, right?
No.
It's not the Dota of the card games.
No,
right?
but it's a great
It's-
game to jump
the League of
in and
Legends.
play for
It's
an
the-
hour here and there.
Just say it. It's the League of Legends of card games.
Kind of is. Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's still
I feel
fun
it.
though. It's still fun. Nothing wrong with that. Is that it?
I believe so.
All right. You guys can find me on Twitter at IndieFinch. Same thing for Twitch. INDIEFINCH.
Dodo. TV Dodo.
TV Dodo. Have you seen his new set he's making? It's sick.
No.
It's a sick.
I haven't even talked to a Nooksy in like.
You're missing
3.
out. Yeah. So Diago, keep doing that
I've
100
talked-
set.
yep.
It's great. You're screwing my train of thought up with your silly flag. We'll be back hopefully next week with Mania. And when Mania's here, we'll get back to the business of grabbing replays, talking about drafts and all that kind of good stuff. Today was a little bit odd because I'm actually getting married. So if you haven't followed me in the past, I'm getting married here in a couple months. And so we're going food tasting at our venue, which is like the one perk of getting married and doing all the planning stuff is you just get free food and they just keep bringing it for you so you can pick the menu. So I'm going to be doing that all weekend, and which is why we couldn't do the show live. And so we decided to power it out here early morning on Friday. Yeah, we'll be back next week, episode 7. Look at the Flipside YouTube. It's youtube.com/Flipside Tactics. That's FLIPSID3 Tactics. So once again, if you're the guy with the regular Flipside Tactics YouTube, we want our YouTube back. But for now, it's the 3s in there. Look for the Dota Clinic episodes. We start here soon enough. And we also got our other shows, and I've also put an episode up with kind of our game plan for the next couple months and what you can expect from that channel and things going forward. That is that. We'll be back next week with episode 7. You guys take care. Hopefully you have a good week of Dota. Don't lose too many games in ranked matchmaking.
Your turn to pick.
Let's go. This is domination among the things you've been waiting for. Headed to the top if we make it, then we'll be taking more. There's no I in team, but something